Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Racic. What is going on, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Clear the Shelf podcast. As always, my eleemosynary co-host Chris Racic is here, and we will be discussing all things Keepa. You see Chris laughing. I dug deep for that adjective, sir.
It's funny. Even Google Docs doesn't even know what you're talking about. It's like,
I know.
Did you mean elementary?
Right. Before we talk about the show tonight, which I think we've actually got a pretty good one, I do want to just plug really quickly the same thing you may have heard last week. Chris is raising funds for Movember. If you're not sure what Movember is, I would go look it up. And his link is going to be down in the show notes. But it is all about men's health, men's mental health. And one of the stats that is just crazy to me is, and this is kind of dark, but it's the suicide rate among men is 5 to 1 compared to women, which is massive. And I don't necessarily want to lay the blame on men necessarily, but society, we kind of keep that stuff bottled up as guys, and we shouldn't. So if you go and give a donation, anything you can, $5, $50, $500, whatever it is, if Chris hits $1,000, I'm going to match 50%. So another $500 on top of that. And I'd love to see him get there. I'm looking to drop the $500. So if you can, if you have it in your budget, please visit the Movember link below. You'll notice the mustache on Chris's face is coming in nicely. Yeah, I would really appreciate it. So
thank you so much, Chris. That's incredibly generous. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. So tonight we're going to be chatting Keepa. And we're going to be chatting Keepa for two reasons. Number one, my buddy Nate took a poll in FBA Today, which is a group of 50,000 plus people who are interested in selling on Amazon or are currently selling on Amazon. And he asked what the most important tool in your Amazon selling toolkit is. And Keepa ended up coming away with a larger share of the vote than I expected. Came away with 58% of the vote. And there were almost 300 votes that came in. And the second reason is a little bit of a selfish reason, but we did just release Keepa Academy. The links are going to be in the show notes. I'm waiting for KeepaAcademy.com to get released because I did buy that. And as soon as it is, then you'll be able to go straight to KeepaAcademy.com. But yeah, we want to talk about Keepa because it's just a really, really important tool. But before we get to that, we've got Jeff Schick, Esquire, who's going to be coming on with us. And we're going to have a little Amazon law review segment. So, Jeff, what is going on, man?
Hey, not much. How are y'all doing today?
Doing fantastic. Yeah, I thought about this as I was saying it, but since, you're my attorney and you are an attorney, and I'm using KeepaAcademy.com, I did get permission from Keepa, so there's not going to be any IP issues using their name or anything like that. They said it's all right as long as we put a little disclaimer at the bottom that we're not affiliated.
Awesome. Good job. I was going to suggest that you get that in writing. So
yeah, I knew it was coming, so I just wanted to head it off at the pass.
Awesome. Good work.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sorry.
Go ahead, man.
I was going to say, so today, I know it's big on everyone's mind. We are in November, and it's, as you can see, Chris voted today. I voted a couple weeks ago. Chris, did you go vote?
Well,
you're talking to Chris Grant.
Yeah,
I did.
So I know Chris Racic went and voted. Unfortunately, I could not make it to a polling station. However, I did get my mail-in ballot dropped off at a polling location late last week. So absolutely, I voted.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So yeah, I just, beginning of November always is interesting for sellers because, especially when you've got election years, things are on people's mind, and then Q4 happens. And so for a lot of sellers, Q4 has already begun. For some newer sellers, they're just starting to experience it for the first time. But whether you're new or experienced, I really, what I think we wanted to talk about today is how to avoid IP claims, because the one word that people seem to have nightmares about. So we want to talk about how do you avoid it. So
perfect.
Awesome.
What I guess what is your biggest tip for avoiding an IP complaint?
So there's a couple. So one is doing your due diligence. There's no replacement for manual review of a listing you've never sold before. And that doesn't mean your VA reviewing it. It means you reviewing it. You're the business owner. You're responsible for everything that happens on Amazon. So don't entrust such a vital step to somebody that's not you, unless they do it better than you. But 9 times out of 10, they don't. So what that means in a manual review is, before you send in product, you actually look at the listing, check the title, check the bullet points, check the brand name. Brand name is the most important attribute on the page, I like to say, because the number one issue we have with product detail page related complaints when it comes to IP is when they're taken down, usually is the wrong brand name. Like, so, you look at a listing, it says Nike Kids. That's wrong. It would be Nike if Nike authorized it. Same thing, like if it's a Yeti tumbler and it says Yeti tumblers, that's wrong because it's a Yeti if it's authorized by Yeti. One of the new things they're doing in brand registry is letting you replace that visit the blank store, blank being the brand. I should say visit the brand store. They're letting you replace that with a brand logo. So if you see a logo at the top, then that means that that's a authorized listing that the brand has enrolled in that program. So you won't see the visit the blank store, but you'll see their logo, and that's just as good.
Those brand logos irritate me just a touch because they make it a little harder for IP Alert to read the brand on the page, and so it gets a little frustrating.
I bet. I was actually just thinking about that. I was like, oh, I wonder how they're finding that attribute.
Yeah, it's not the easiest. We figured out a workaround, but it was not fun.
Gotcha. That makes sense. At least you guys found a workaround. So that's, tip number one is really doing your due diligence. Look at that listing, look at everything about it. And if you see any words like pack of 3, pack of 4, 2 16-ounce bottles, something like that, really that should be a red flag going up saying, hey, wait a second, I need to reevaluate this listing, because that's a really good indicator that there's potentially, and I could be, this isn't for every listing, but for a lot of listings, it means it's not a manufacturer created listing. It's a multi-pack that may or may not be authorized by the manufacturer. And so if you have and believe it or not, that can turn into an IP issue. It's a trademark on product detail page violation. Because if somebody goes to Costco and they buy a 2-pack of, I don't know, throw out some shampoo, whatever, Crest toothpaste. You buy a 2-pack of Crest toothpaste at Costco. Well, that came shrink wrapped. It's got a manufacturer issued UPC. The manufacturer clearly is endorsing this behavior of the 2-pack because they made it themselves. So that belongs on Amazon. But if you instead go and you find that, well, Crest only sells single tubes, and someone's now created a 4-pack of Crest toothpaste, red flag should go up, because that means Crest can go in, or Procter & Gamble can go in there and file an IP claim against that listing, because it creates what's called an affiliation, endorsement, or sponsorship. And which basically what that means is people think that it's authorized by the brand and it's not. And so we see a lot of the Voorhees takedowns centered around this false affiliation, endorsement, and sponsorship area when they're trying to get rid of unauthorized multi-packs.
Interesting.
So
that's interesting to me, because there are just so many multi-packs on Amazon. Yeah, which I get. I mean, for the consumer, it's actually probably a good thing. Some people want to just want to conveniently buy a 4-pack, a 6-pack, or whatever it is. So that's fascinating.
It's convenient, although I should say Amazon really wants people to get into volume-based pricing. So their new multi-pack guidance really stresses that basically, I think it even says in there, if I remember correctly, it says, you should utilize volume pricing if the manufacturer doesn't authorize the multi-pack. So
Interesting. Are there any other kind of red flags that pop up for you on listings that people might not think about?
good. Yeah, great question. So the other day I was looking at a listing with a seller, and he was showing it to me, and he goes, I got an IP claim on this listing and I can't figure out why and how would I avoid it in the future. And we're looking at it and it has two images, a front and a back photo of the product. And they kind of weren't very high quality images either. And he goes, why did this listing get taken down? And it was since back up because somebody else had appealed it. And that's why it was back up. And I said, well, let's go to that manufacturer's normal listings. And we go, and the manufacturer's normal listings have A+ content. They've got like 6 to 10 images that are really high quality, lifestyle imagery, multiple sides than just the front and the back. And so and I'm looking at it, I'm like, so this is the difference. This is why, because this listing is trash compared to the manufacturer's listing. Because if that's what their marketing department's putting out for their single pack, they'd do the same for their multi-pack as well if they wanted a multi-pack listing. So
Interesting. Let me go from another direction. And let's say I'm a brand owner, or maybe I want to start doing PL or something like that. What could I do to keep people from actually infringing on my IP?
Well, there's a lot of scenarios. So obviously, if you come up with a great product, you can get it, like brand new novel concept and it's unique, you can get a patent. If you come up with something that's very distinctive, like think of like Coca-Cola bottle, you could get what's called trade dress protection. Everyone knows about trademarks because back in the day, the first part of any private label course was always you need to get a trademark and here's where to go. And then people also, of course, know about copyrights. Copyrights are for images, photos, text, things like that.
Okay, interesting. So, and the only reason I ask that is, one, I do on occasion, I'll have a brand or a brand owner reach out and want to chat with me because they just happened to come across IP Alert and they want to see if they get their brand in it, to try to keep people off of it. And that kind of stuff, I usually will say, yeah, we'll add your brand because I know that you're going to file IP complaints and stuff like that. But the other thing I've noticed is that a couple of, one brand that I have sold in the past, they changed all of their listings and they added a branded pill carrier to their listings to try to keep Amazon sellers from selling, because it was an easy product to get. You get it CVS, Walgreens, and any other place that sells supplements. And so they went in and added a little sticker to a really cheap pill caddy and try to keep people off the listing that way. So not the way that I would have done it personally, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of that lately, especially with people and going into bundles. And that's the other thing, I'm always a big advocate when people are making bundles is get permission from the people that you're selling their products in there, because while many brands will not file IPs, so I'm not saying every brand out there is going to file an IP. Most of them won't, or I should say many of them won't. But if you want to make sure that your bundle is safe, get a letter of authorization before you start selling. Because if you reach out to Crest and you say, hey, I'm going to bundle your toothbrush and toothpaste with my toothbrush holder, are you okay with this? And they say, absolutely not. Well, now you've just prevented yourself from getting, some people would say, oh, now you're killing this idea. I look at the other direction. Now you're preventing yourself from investing a whole bunch of money in inventory and getting hit with an IP claim. Mm-hmm. So it's just two ways of looking at the same problem and coming up with a solution.
So we know that kind of permission is given at times. And let me give you an example. I have sold multi-packs of those little travel, like toothpaste, toothbrush, and I think like maybe a mouthwash or something. And of course, they're all the same brand. It was Crest or Colgate, I can't remember. And so we know in the brand of that little bundle essentially that goes in a retail store was not Crest. It was like Dr. Teeth or I don't know, something really stupid, but
Isn't that a Muppet?
you buy them. Well, yeah, I think he is. Yeah. You buy these at, you can buy these at like Dollar Tree. You can buy them at Walmart, all kinds of places. So we know that they got permission to be able to create that. So if I wanted to do something similar, but I want to do it on Amazon, where should I go to reach out to people to be able to get that kind of permission?
LinkedIn, believe it or not. You're going to
smart.
You go to LinkedIn, you find someone, maybe it's a sales representative in the Crest toothpaste division. You find people that are relevant to what you're looking for. By no means am I telling you to go find the vice president of North American sales for Crest, because he's not going to write you back. He would be the right person if he write you back, but he's not going to write you back. So start low. He might be the one that signs your letter, but you want to start low, because you reach out to someone, the low level sales rep that is, commission based, that is interested, like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then you've seen the dollar signs. Oh, you can place bulk orders through me for this, Crest toothpaste, and I can get you the letter of authorization. Well, now we're no longer having to scour the shelves or online arbitrage for that Crest. We're actually able to buy direct from Crest with a wholesale account, and we get a letter of authorization. So you kill two birds with one stone, get two benefits as well, so.
Nice. And you get someone on the inside working on your behalf because they're seeing the dollar signs. That's a great tip.
Correct.
Yeah, that is a great tip.
Really try to find that person,
Yeah. I know that sounds tough, but with a little bit of internet sleuthing and the fact that we've got Twitter and LinkedIn, it becomes a heck of a lot easier, number one. But number two, and something that I've been kind of relearning here lately as I try to get more and more into Twitter, is just how easy it is to get people to respond, because tons of people just don't expect a response, and so they don't reach out at all. And then when you're like, you know what, if I don't reach out, the response is, null and void anyway, so I'll just go ahead and give it a shot. And I have been absolutely amazed at how many people will reply, respond, read your DM and get back to you. It's actually kind of crazy, to be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kind of on that same thing, even big companies, they do respond to those, tweets. A lot of people know that I come from an aviation family, and my stepdad just retired from Delta, and he had someone on his flight that had, I guess, like 20 or 30,000 Twitter followers, and they were having an issue and they tweeted about it. And the social media team saw it, reached out to flight operations, dispatch, who then sent what's called an ACARS message, which is like that little printer that prints receipts up. And he had a little receipt print up in the middle of the flight from like Atlanta to Los Angeles saying, passenger seated in 5A has 25,000 followers and is complaining. Please meet them when the plane lands and apologize on behalf of Delta.
Wow.
Wow.
And so he had to go, before they opened the door, he walked up there and, I'm the captain of the plane. We want to just make sure you had things were better for you. And if not, we've got someone here that'll meet you at the top of the jetway to take care of the situation.
It's cool. I feel bad that, the captain had to do that. I'm sure the guy with a bunch of stripes on his shoulder doesn't necessarily want to do that, because I'm guessing 30 years ago he was flying fighter jets, and now he has to apologize to somebody who is upset because his drink had too many ice cubes.
It's all part of the brand, I guess. So. Yeah. But it is interesting.
Yeah, it is. Well, and I don't want to keep you the whole show, but any other things that sellers should look out for IP, are keeping themselves safe from IP complaints, or what should they do in the event that they get one? What kind of things should they have ready for you when they reach out to you and ask you to handle it for them?
So great question. So Well, I have a couple tips and then also of what to do. So in terms of what to do, make sure you've got your documentation in order because, like big things we're always going to need. We're going to need the email from Amazon so that we know exactly what's being asserted. The person asserting the claim, whether it's trademark, copyright, might not even be the brand. So part of what our team does is we look at each claim and figure out who's actually the rights owner. Just before this, about 20 minutes ago, before we started talking, I was working on a case where someone had asserted a trademark against a private label seller, except they don't have a trademark, and their trademark had been denied or refused registration by the trademark office, and yet Amazon still allowed them to file a false complaint for infringement. So, but if we wouldn't have looked at that original email from Amazon that said this is the trademark number being asserted, a lot of sellers would have gone into it thinking, oh my gosh, I've got a problem. I'm in the wrong, when in reality, this seller is absolutely not in the wrong. This is a case of a bad actor on Amazon being in the wrong. So having your receipts, having your emails, everything together, crucial.
Was the complainant, did their email happen to be like at 163.com or at QQ.com?
No, it's actually another lawyer, which makes it really interesting because he should know better. So now I have a call into him. Oh,
sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
Oh, I have a call into him just to be like, did you actually file this? Because I'm actually concerned that it might not be him because he works for a big firm in Washington, D.C., or at least that's the email address is a big firm in D.C. And so it would be very strange for someone at a major DC law firm to be blatantly violating the law.
Now, how do you think that's going to play out? Like, is there any is that just like, you move the seller through it, they don't have the rights, they don't own the trademark, just bullet dodged, or is there recourse or
so
how is that?
Yeah, great question. So we're working right now. We're trying to get the seller to get the listing back up because it's going to be a good seller for Black Friday and Cyber Monday. That's first objective is get it back up as fast as possible. Second objective is that we'll probably take it to Amazon's attorneys and flag it as a clear case of brand registry abuse and ask that they take action against that person because they willfully and knowingly filed a infringement complaint for a trademark that they don't have the legal rights to. So they should not be on brand registry.
Nice.
Interesting. All right. I have one last question and then I will let you go. So something that I've always been curious about is I try to be a little bit more objective because it's very easy as Amazon sellers to, whenever you get an IP complaint or, anything happens, oh, Amazon's trying to screw me over. It can become very personal very quickly. So yes. I really try to be objective, but I'm curious, what is Amazon's thinking with allowing things like counterfeit without a test buy complaints to go through, and just passing that off onto the seller rather than there needing to be some sort of vetting process or, anything like that?
So I think part of it has to do with the fact that Amazon has an obligation to take down infringing content as quickly as possible. So if they required everyone to do a test buy before making a report, then there is a huge liability potential for them of counterfeit products. So for the FBA Prime seller, it's not as good of an argument, but it makes sense. But for the FBM seller shipping from Shanghai, China, you can make that argument pretty well because then it could be 3-4 weeks of sales before you ever even get your product to be able to make that report. So they do it as a way to let brands make valid reports that are, based on a good faith belief. Now, most brands that are abusing that are, that's where we have an issue. And we've even had issues now with some brands doing test buys and then filing false complaints when it's authentic product. And those are really harmful for sellers. So I'm always a big advocate for sellers. If you're going to get a counterfeit complaint, we'd rather get a counterfeit without a test buy because with the test buy is going to be much more serious with Amazon. And so that's why it's it's definitely, but why Amazon does it. I mean, I'll give you an example where we dealt with a case once where I was contacted by one of the pet manufacturers that was a friend of a friend that I sold all the pet shampoos. Well, this manufacturer was friends with that other one that I had been selling. And they said, we've got this issue. People are selling counterfeit products online on Amazon, and it's killing dogs. And so they did a test buy, they sent it to a lab. The lab confirmed that the pills the supplement pills that were being sold, were designed to look like our client's product, but were not our client's product. And they contained arsenic, cadmium, and lead, which is why the dogs were dying. And so we took down they did 3 test buys. We sent those to Amazon Legal, and they took down those 3 people within a couple hours because we attached the lab report showing that it was clearly counterfeit. Within a couple hours, 5 more sellers popped up with newly launched Amazon stores that now said shipping from China. And this product is normally made in Dallas, Texas. So we sent that to Amazon Legal and said, the 5 brand new sellers, this product's made in Dallas, and yet they're somehow shipping from China, and our client doesn't distribute in the People's Republic. So, they allowed them to go ahead. They went ahead and took it down because
Interesting.
And rightfully so, because there's no one in their right mind that would be exporting products from Dallas to Shanghai and shipping them back to the United States.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's the kind of thing. That's the reason why I really do try to take Amazon's view into account when I'm thinking about this kind of stuff, because that's a huge deal. And unfortunately, Amazon has to protect the consumer against the worst actors on the platform, because there are going to be scammers, counterfeiters, people who do bad things, and it sucks when good sellers get kind of mixed in there, but it happens, and there's just too many sellers to police every single person with different rules or things like that. So, yeah, that's interesting.
Now, 2 more tips. You asked for 2 tips, so I have to tell you the 2 more tips. One of them is to utilize, services like IP Alert. There's my plug for y'all's thing.
Appreciate that.
Whenever clients ask, how do I avoid IP claims? I say IP Alert. So I send them to there. Tip number, I actually have 3 tips. Tip number 2 is, if a brand tells you, and especially during Q4, if a brand says, remove your listing or we're going to file an IP claim against you on Amazon, I would close the listing and talk to an attorney. Talk to me, talk to my team. We can actually help you get through the situation. That may involve us sending them a cease and desist letter, telling them, don't file a false complaint against our client. These products are authentic. And at least keep the listing closed so that they can't file against you while we work through these different scenarios. Because last thing you want is, I had a seller a couple weeks ago. He gets a cease and desist letter, says, you have 24 hours. We're going to file a counterfeit claim against you. Is that brand in the wrong? Of course they are. And I said, he goes, well, I have a first sale doctrine right to sell through this product, and I'm going to sell through it. I said, okay, but let's talk numbers here. How many units do you have? I've got 5. Okay. How much did you spend on each one? I spent $15. Okay. All right. 5 times 15, decent amount of money, but this is not, breaking the bank money. I said, and what's the profit? About $4 per unit. Okay. $20. All right. So we know our upside is 20. I said, so if they file these IP claims against you, and it was multiple ASINs, because it wasn't 5 of just one unit, it was multiple ASINs. I'm like, so if they file, 5 IP claims against you and it shuts down your account, how much profit do you make in a day? More than $20. So, it made the analysis, when you put it in dollars and cents, it made sense for him to decide to close that listing while we came up with a new strategy. So.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah, that's something I don't think a lot of people necessarily do right off the bat. It's closing the listing's not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind.
Right.
So
close it and then figure out what to do, and then other strategy to avoid IP claims is Keepa. There, you can actually look at Keepa graphs, and if you see that it's going from, 50 sellers, I'm sorry, my cat's playing with a gift card that he just knocked off the counter. If you see that it's going from 50 sellers to 2, and then 15 to 2, and 25 to 2, and it just keeps going, up and down, that's a good indication that there's something going on. So I'm sure you guys will cover that more. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, sorry. I could keep asking questions all night, but I'm going to ask one more. Okay. So how often do you see brands that become hot and heavy on IP complaints? So, for example, It Cosmetics, they used to be really, really bad, and I think they might have gotten in bed with like Recommerce or something like that. They don't seem to file IP complaints anymore. And then Starbucks went really hard for like a month, and then they stopped. So how often does that kind of thing happen? And does it happen because they get lazy, or they don't think it's worth the money, or what's the reason that they start and then stop?
So they probably start because they've heard some video that tells them that they can use, brand registry to police the platform, or they sign up with some marketing agency that believes that they've solved the Amazon problem, and
Great
they
points.
file false IP complaints, and then why it usually stops. This is pure speculation. I don't work for any of those brands, but why does it stop? It's probably comes down to one of two things. It's either money or effectiveness. So money, because they're paying somebody to just go and zap people all day long, and they may find that that's not effective. Some of these big companies actually will do the analysis. Oh, we zapped all these sellers, and then our sales of merchandise went down. Go figure. So then they'd stop. They will run analyses to see. It also can be, attorneys, like myself, getting involved, where we send letters to the legal departments and say, this is what this company's doing. And I've actually done that. I've done this where I had one of the brands, I sent a letter to their general counsel, explaining that they had someone on their team that was filing false counterfeit complaints against sellers, and that we've reached out to them, and that they were providing basic, very, smart remarks back to me, explaining why they weren't going to retract because the seller was a quote unquote scammer, because they did arbitrage and things like that. And so I forwarded this to the general counsel, and I said, your marketing person set up a very nice, case here if we wanted to take this, but I think it's time now for you guys to step in. And the general counsel, and this is a Fortune 500 company, a huge company. And he wrote back, I should even say Fortune 100, it's big. And they wrote back and they said, we're so sorry that this happened. We didn't even know that our marketing person was doing this. In fact, he's just an intern, and we have since deactivated his brand registry privileges and retracted all of these complaints. We apologize for the inconvenience that this caused.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah. So many rabbit trails we could go down with this, but like I said, I don't want to keep you all night. We may need to do an episode, like just get you in here for an hour and just answer IP issues and complaints and all kinds of stuff. Cause, if I threw this out to like our small group, I bet you I could probably get 20 or 30 questions to throw at you. So
sounds good. Let's do it.
All right. I'll tell you what, before you go, if you need or want Jeff's help or a little bit of peace of mind, I know that it does help me sleep a little bit better at night knowing that Jeff is a text message away. You can head over to jeffschick.com. He's got a program it's only $89 a month. I would imagine that a lot of you spend more than that on coffee every single month, and it really does give you peace of mind. And Jeff, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and chat a little bit, man.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good evening.
Jeff.
Hey guys, wanted to take a quick second and thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Racic has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show. All right, now that we are finished with the Amazon Law review, we do want to dive into Keepa, and because it really is one of the best tools for Amazon sellers. In my opinion, I would imagine that after your Amazon Seller Central account, like Keepa is probably the very first thing that you should buy and learn how to use. I think it's that important, and that doesn't matter if you're wholesale, if you're arbitrage, doing OA, RA, whatever. I would even say that you could probably use it for some private label type stuff. I don't do any private label, so I can't say for sure, but I would imagine there's some data there that could be helpful for PL sellers. And so I figured in this episode we could talk about some myths that are out there. There's one very pervasive myth that I've even made videos about that I cannot believe that people still believe this and listen to people who say that it's true. And then, I don't know, I kind of want to get your take on like how you use Keepa and stuff like that. And maybe we can kind of riff on that a little bit. So let's chat Keepa myths first. And I'm going to say the one that irritates the heck out of me. Okay. Sales rank drops do not equal sales. Hard stop. I made a video about this not too long ago, and it got more views than I expected it to. As most of my videos don't go over 500-600 views, but this one jumped up to like 1,000 views really, really quickly. And there were some people who are like, well, that's silly. But in the example, I used an example with a shoe that was ranked number 3 in all of clothing, shoes, and jewelry. And the sales rank drops per month on average were 9. Okay. And then the second example was an item that was consistently ranked around 300,000 in the sports and outdoors category, and the sales rank drops on average for it were 9. It was exactly the same. And so I used those examples because it was obvious that the shoe is selling thousands and thousands of times per month. And this other item was not. It actually probably was closer to 9 or 10 per month. But I don't know. I don't know how better to explain that sales rank drops don't equal the number of sales. And I see it on Instagram. I see it on Twitter. I see it on TikTok. And I don't know. I don't know who keeps telling people that this is the way it works.
Yeah. Think about it. What's the highest number that you've seen at the bottom of a Keepa graph when you're looking at an ASIN? I'm not sure I've seen more than, maybe it comes close to 200 drops per month. I mean, maybe there's some exceptional ones that maybe the ones I don't bother looking at, but everything, like the highest numbers seem to be, 170 drops per month. I mean, so if you're taking it in a literal sense that Keepa drops equals sales, nothing on Amazon sells more than 200 times a month. Like really? Right. I mean, and how anybody could think that that's the truth, like definitively, just take a tour through different sales estimators. Like there's a bunch of different sources and everyone's answer is different. You could run one ASIN through, run it through Jungle Scout sales estimator, and it doesn't even register after a certain ranking, all your tools, Seller Amp, take your Keepa drops, take, I forget what some of the other ones are. I'm drawing a blank now, but all of these numbers are different. And oftentimes they're wildly different from each other, that's why, when I, I dabble in with lead lists, and that's why I decided to use Keepa drops as the metric, because sales, estimations they vary so much. Essentially Keepa drops is the only accurate thing, and in my opinion, knowing the level of variance, it's essentially the only true measurement and as close as we can get to actual sales. Now, obviously, there's an interpretation, and once you get something that is flying and it's got a great rank, like you were talking about before, like as the rank gets higher and sales velocity slows, Keepa drops are probably get closer to the actual amount of sales. But as velocity picks up, that's I find Keepa drops as a trusted metric. In measuring a number that no one knows except for Amazon themselves.
Yeah. It would be amazing if they would release that kind of information. I mean, I understand why they don't. Everyone wants to sell the thing that sells, 10,000 times a month. And so I would imagine that if they release that kind of information, the long tail, which is where they probably make most of their money, would get ignored a lot more. At least that's probably what I would do.
Yeah,
I'd
sure.
say,
It would have a negative effect on. We surmise that Amazon wants to have a large catalog. They're trying to balance as big a catalog as they can get with whatever their warehouse space is, as they keep pinching us on that end. But but ultimately they want customers. They're all about the customer, obviously, and they want them to be able to buy basically anything they can think of on the platform. So if the true numbers came out, you may have items past a certain rank just chopped off, and very few sellers take an interest in it and stock it.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other myths that you can think of that have become pervasive about Keepa?
Yeah, the items that aren't ranked at all. You can get quite a few different opinions on that. I've seen leads distributed that have no rank. And talk to people. Some people would say, well, why would you even put that on a lead list? That has no value to me. That doesn't sell at all. That people think that losing a sales rank equals it doesn't sell. It may slow sales if it's type of thing where you're looking at a year on the Keepa graph or a 3-month segment, and you see the point where it stopped being ranked, as opposed to items that seem to never be ranked, never registered. You can actually see the point where it loses the rank. It obviously didn't just completely stop selling. There was something that caused it to drop out of the ranking. But some people think that's just that's my cue to move right on past it. And I find that's not the case. You can get, again, like we're talking about with Keepa drops, not being a 1-to-1 ratio on sales. There's other sales velocity indicators, based on the number of sellers. You can see certain movement in sellers. If they're a bunch of jaggedy, up and downs. Obviously, people are coming in stock and going out of stock, and it has to be moving. So there is value in the rank NA, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. And I wish that I could figure out like what the best number is, but I always like looking at the number of reviews, of course, for items that aren't ranked. And I know what my seller feedback percentage is. It's like 0.5% of buyers leave me feedback as a seller. I'm curious if the number is that low for product reviews. I would like to think it's a little bit higher because, people like to talk about what they bought, I guess. But if something, let's say something averages 10 reviews every single month, and let's just say that only 1 out of 10 customers leave a review. Well, 10 reviews a month, 1% reviews. We don't really do public math here, but that's like 100 sales per month. So it's fairly easy to figure out if something moves or not, just based on the number of reviews. I mean, it's kind of the same method you would use if you were looking at variations on a shoe or a piece of clothing to pick which one you want to sell. Except for you get to do it for the whole ASIN. And I know people. I think most people know that. I just don't think that a lot of people are necessarily comfortable with making a buying decision when that's what they have to go off of. Because then you got to kind of say, okay, well, do I use 1% or do I use 3% or 5%? But really, I think that data is just as good, if not better, than sales ranks, because at least you could kind of give yourself a number of, well, this is probably selling this number every single month. So,
yeah,
we should probably do a study and pick like 20 or 30 ASINs and see how many reviews they get, across different bands of sales rank. And then we could go out and find unranked items and then just test those, by selling the actual products. That would be kind of interesting. Sounds like an awful lot of work though, just to come up with some content for a podcast or a blog post or something.
Podcast would move to one episode per quarter.
Right.
That's the effort we had to put in. Yeah, but that's that's an important point. It is, using Keepa to find alternate indicators of good products to sell. And I'll use this. It's related point, but it's an aside. But we were talking in the mastermind last night, and the more than just one of us are worried about price tanking comes up, and obviously it's frustrated, and being Q4, any issues are magnified, because of the how crucial a period of time we're in right now. So, we were kicking it around, and it seems like, and we've talked about this in the price tanking episode too, but it seems like there's more sellers and there's more thoughts of people willing to drop ROI faster. And for whatever reason, we've speculated, there are people who are 0% ROI is their minimum from day one. When we had Dylan on, he's cutting after 30 days, where I was I cut after 60, and so obviously there's different opinions, but it seems like there's an emphasis on sell-through rate, and just moving stuff regardless of profit. not completely in lieu of, but it's taken a back seat to simply the volume. So we were talking about ways, we were trying to brainstorm ways to combat this, because it seems like the old-fashioned methodology of either be the first one in and get your profit and get out, or decide you're going to wait for people to sell out and then get your profits on the back end, maybe a little bit later. It seems like this new mind frame, this new way of looking at it, where you're sacrificing profit quicker, makes the profit on the back end take even longer. Right. And it doesn't seem like waiting it out for people to go out of stock is all that feasible anymore. So basically that puts, in my opinion, that puts a stressor on being able to continually find new products to sell. And I wondered out loud in the meeting, and I'll run this by you now, but I wonder if it's, maybe the 5 to 10 unit test buy isn't necessarily a precursor to going all in on 50 to 100 units so much as maybe a way to combat price tanking and just the frustrations is continually refreshing the possible products that you can sell, just simply getting as many profitable ASINs as you can, and truly, the true implementation of a mile wide, essentially is. So I feel like it's more important to find more profits, and that's how this relates to being able to use Keepa and expand your knowledge of it. And what do you think? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah. So I like to think this is something I've been fairly consistent on. I really do like a mile wide strategy. And I know that, if you go out and listen to the guys on, Instagram or whatever, like everyone's like, oh, it's time to buy 100 units, or I dropped $10,000 on one ASIN today. And while I'm like, cool, I think that's great for your business model, it's not a business model that I'm willing to do. For that reason. One, I do think that there are more sellers, and that it's going to happen. Amazon's not a blue ocean anymore. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a red ocean yet, but the water's getting a little bloody, and anywhere where you can make money, that's going to happen. It's just the nature of marketplaces and the network effect and all of that stuff. And weird guys like us who hop on, podcasts and stuff to talk about this kind of stuff. But the other thing is, I don't know how sophisticated all the people who are coming in to Amazon are, and do they understand what a margin is, or do they understand anything other than, well, I've got an American Express payment that's due, and so I need my money back as soon as possible. And I would imagine that there's maybe that's one of the other reasons that I try to be a little bit more business focused rather than just all Amazon focused when I post things to social media, is because I want people to learn to be business owners too, and not just resellers. But yeah, there's a lot of reasons. But again, that's why I'm a huge fan of the mile wide. One, you need to be really good at sourcing. I mean, it's a skill that can pay very, very well. Two, I think it is important that you're always finding new products. You never know which one of those are going to turn into replens and make your life a lot easier. And then the other reason I like the mile wide strategy is because you do get to hedge your downside risk. The person who spends $10,000 on one ASIN, well, if that product tanks and they cannot wait it out any longer, they need to liquidate eventually, and maybe they only get $8,000 back. But if you and I spend $10,000 across 100 ASINs, well, even if 20% of those tank and we can be profitable or break even on the other 80%, chances are our average profit is going to be a heck of a lot higher than the person who lost all their money on the 10,000 on one ASIN.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's an inch deep and a mile and a half wide, maybe,
right?
Or two. It's going to be a race to trademark that after this releases, right?
Exactly.
An inch deep, 2 miles wide. So, but yeah, but that's what makes this so important is if you could, especially if you know that there's a big batch of sellers that are going to look past something not having a ranking and just dismiss it right away. There's an advantage there, and maybe if you're looking in places that a whole bunch of sellers are going to walk right on by, maybe you can kind of camp out on some profit for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this statistic that I threw up not too long ago, but I was curious about price tanking, and it's been a conversation I've seen a lot as well. I know that you talked about it in your mastermind, but I do see it a lot of other places. I saw someone post a screenshot of a seasonal Lego product that had 600 sellers on it. Okay. Now it is a fast moving product. And when they posted the screenshot of this to Instagram, where a million other sellers could see what this was, it was still profitable at the time. but I knew that eventually it's going to drop. It's got to. There's no way the demand keeps up with 600 sellers. Especially since it's seasonal. But that made me think, well, how many products have increased in price? And so I went out and I did a little bit of digging. And Keepa actually can give you all of this information. But I went out and I said I wanted to see anything where the price over the last 90 days has increased from anywhere from 10% to 1,000%. And I also wanted all of those items to have a 30-day average rank of under 500,000 on Amazon. And there were over 1 million products that had increased in price over the past 90 days.
Wow.
Oh, and those were all products where Amazon was out of stock 100% over the past 90 days.
Even better.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. I did not expect it to be quite that many. And I know a lot of people would say, oh, well, 500,000, you can't sell anything there. And that's not true at all. There are two categories I'm thinking of where stuff sells at those ranges quite frequently. Tools and home improvement, home and kitchen. And clothing and shoes, as long as there's not a ton of variations, you could still sell stuff at 500,000. But whenever people do complain about price tanking, I do try to think about that, because I don't think that prices increasing is necessarily just not just a seasonal thing. I think that happens all the time. But yeah, it's fascinating. And I know that our Amazon law review went a little long, so we were not going to get into everything that we wanted to get to about Keepa tonight. But one thing I am really curious about is, what's an example of a way that you might use Keepa that other people may not even think about?
I have been what I'm doing most of the time is, and it's funny that like I think I've attended every single one of your OA challenges since you started. I was definitely in on the first one, and I'm not sure I've missed any of them. And I keep signing up for them, mainly to go for the Keepa training, because it's going to jog something, and maybe I'm just an idiot, but there's so much to it. And I find all this cool stuff, and I'll grab a couple takeaways and be like, man, that is a great idea. I want to try that out. And I'll get a few reps in, but it's like, there's so many different things I want to try. It's spread out enough that I completely forget how to do them,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'm looking, I got to go find the segment. I got to find the day, find the video or whatever. Or if I'm smart enough, I'll put a note, somewhere and link it. But there's so much you can do with Keepa, that I kind of get the blinders on, and just kind of dig in. But what I've been doing lately, the latest thing that I've got tunnel vision on is I've been targeting specific prices for the buy box.
Mm-hmm.
And it's based on one of the videos that you put out. You planted that seed, and I love it because you can. Here's a pro tip for you. If you sell products that cost more, most of the time you're going to make more. I don't know if that's
that's mind bending.
That's free of charge. Come back next week for another tip. But it's so obvious, but it's still something that as you watch it, if you sell more expensive stuff, the bars go up faster and everything gets prettier, and you get happier about everything. So I'm kind of feeding that. It's the mouse with the button and the cheese. I'm pressing that button over and over again, and I haven't got shocked yet. So, but I like that. I like, being able to hone into certain areas of the buy box.
Mm-hmm.
And you can set corridors on where you want the rank to be, and you can exclude categories that you are more than likely not worth your time, and but that's what I've been doing. And I've been having a whole lot of fun and success with it.
Yeah. I love corridors. I love setting up corridors and finding those just incredible. I came across something actually while I was recording Keepa Academy, I came across a listing, and over the past 90 days, the sales rank was super boring. It bounced between like 30 and 40,000 over the past 90 days. Didn't go below that, didn't go above it, like hardly ever. The buy box line was, just as flat as Kansas. It was, it was insane. And the number of sellers was moving up and down. Like nobody was messing with the price. Nobody was going super deep. Everybody was getting a turn in the buy box. It was like the perfect product. And so, of course, after I was done recording the video, I went and did a Google search. And sure enough, it was fairly simple to source. But, you weren't seeing 50 sellers. You weren't seeing 2 sellers. It was just staying right in between like 4 and 7 sellers. And there was way more than one example. And that's why I love the corridors. It's absolutely my favorite. But there are 2, and again, we went way over, so I've got an idea for the way we're going to end this episode, and you guys are going to want to stick around for it. But I have 2 favorite methods, I think, for Keepa. I think everyone knows that I'm a fan of rabbit trails. I like to start with, one product, and I may start with a Spider-Man toy, and by the time I'm done sourcing, I'm looking at toilet cleaning solution, and you kind of just get there by letting the internet speak to you. But in Keepa, whenever you're looking at a product, there's a little button in the Keepa graph that says related bestsellers. And if you open that up, you're going to see 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 of these other products that are related to this one product that you can then start looking at or, thinking of. And so if you're looking at, say, a Comet cleaning solution or cleaning powder, in the related bestsellers, you might see a Method bathroom cleaner, and you might see a Clorox bleach, but then you're going to see a bundle, and you're going to see a multi-pack, and all these things that you can start thinking of that might take you down another rabbit trail. And so that's one of my favorites. And then the other thing that I really enjoy is in the product finder on Keepa.com, I tend to stick to a couple of brands at a time. So like I might know of a brand that's having a really killer sale. And so I'll go out and I will pull up every product that brand has, and I'll just reverse search every single one of them. But then the other thing I'll do is I'll go out to Google and I'll say, hey, what are brands that are similar to, let's say Nerf, for example. What are some brands similar to Nerf? Well, the first one that pops into my head and Google also is going to be Zuru, Z-U-R-U, which, by the way, if you want an interesting business read, go look up how Zuru was founded. It's absolutely fascinating. But, then you can pull up that brand, and then you can find another one and another, and you can go really, really deep on all of these brands and source, every nook and cranny. And a couple of things happens, in my opinion. Number one, you learn a ton about it. If you spend enough time sourcing it, you're going to find sales that happen frequently or coupons that happen frequently that you can take advantage of. And I think that's really, really powerful as well.
Yeah, boy, you change lanes a little bit into the SEO land, and I read a lot of that type of stuff when I study SEO. Like the using Google, like people also search for.
Yeah,
that's you're basically using our own search volume, for our own benefit. To find. Because Google, if you look in the right place or you just kind of pay attention, Google will tell you what the masses are also doing, and it'll give you related searches and keywords like that.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a little bit of an aside, but I think being able to kind of mash those together. Now James Altucher has a term for it. I can't remember what he calls it, but knowing a little about a lot of things, I think is actually a net positive, for being an Amazon seller, business owner, that kind of stuff. All right. So I know that we went long with the Amazon Law review, and Jeff, of course, we could have gone longer. We'll get him back, but I figured what we might do for everybody so that they don't have to listen to us go on for another 30 or 40 minutes is I'd love if you have a Keepa question. I want to do a follow-up episode to this, but if you have a Keepa question, send it in to us. And I think we'll do like a Q&A session on Keepa, maybe even for our next episode, and just try to rapid fire answer as many questions about Keepa as possible, because I know that there are a ton of questions out there. So here's what you can do. You can leave a comment under this video if you're watching on YouTube, or if you are listening to the podcast, you can email me at chris@cleartheshelf.com with the subject line Keepa question. And if it's okay with you, Chris, I'd love to next week maybe just do a Keepa Q&A and try to answer as many questions as we can.
Yeah, that'd be great, because
right.
There's so much to cover on Keepa.
Yeah, there really is. So shoot me an email, chris@cleartheshelf.com with subject line Keepa question, or drop it below if you happen to be watching this on YouTube. And next week we'll do a Keepa Q&A where all we do is answer your questions about Keepa and try to do as many as possible. So, all right, I think that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for tuning in. Make sure to check out all the links below. We've got Movember is going to be over pretty soon. I'd love to get that to Chris's goal of $1,000. Check out Keepa Academy if you want to learn a little bit more about Keepa. We've actually got a quiz that you can take to, 1, get a discount on the course, but 2, also just test your Keepa knowledge a little bit. And then 3, make sure to reach out and let us know your Keepa questions, and we'll make sure to do an episode with a Keepa Q&A, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. All right, that's it for us this week, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.